While I was going through my late mother's things, I found an old discontinued phone tucked away in the back of a drawer. It was the same one I'd used back in my senior year of high school. I thought I'd lost it a decade ago, but it turned out my mom had been hiding it all this time. I plugged it in, and as it powered up, the screen lit up with hundreds of unread messages. They were all from the same person, Silas Thorne. The last message was sent 3 years ago. Zoe, this is the last time I'll ever reach out to you. My mother only told me the truth about why she broke Silas and me apart right before she passed away. 1. Silas's mother was her bitter rival. 2. His mother had stolen her first love. 3. Silas looked too much like that man. After all these years, hearing the truth didn't exactly shock me, but it didn't leave me indifferent either. Maybe I was too calm, because even my mother let go of her obsession in her final moments. If you and Silas are meant to find each other again, don't let it slip away. I know you stayed away for years because of me. I was wrong, and I'll be watching over you both from above. My heart was a mess of emotions, trapped between resentment and regret. I aimlessly scrolled through the old phone. The lock screen was still a photo of Silas and me. Every app icon was part of a matching set Wekosen together back then. Dusty memories flooded back all at once, making my chest tighten painfully in my flustered state. My finger accidentally brushed against the speed dial for number 1. The next second, Silas Thorne's name flashed on the screen. As the call connected, I snapped out of it and hung up immediately. It only rang for 2 South, so surely it didn't go through. My fingertips went numb and my heart hammered against my ribs. I quickly stood up, trying to focus on packing my mom's belongings into boxes. Suddenly, a violent vibration shook the room, acting faster than I could think. I lunged back for the old phone, but the old phone was silent. The noise was coming from the phone in my pocket. I let out a breathless, dry laugh and answered it, only to be hit by another bolt from the blue. My father's condition had worsened, and he was being rushed into emergency surgery. I scrambled to the hospital as fast as my legs would carry me outside the red light was blindingly bright, making my heart lurch into my throat. The agonizing wait didn't last long before the door swung open and a lead surgeon emerged, followed by a group of interns. I rushed forward immediately. Doctor, how is my dad? Is he out of the word? Danger died in my throat as the man pulled off his surgical mask. A face that was both familiar and hauntingly cold was revealed. The boyish voice I remembered had been replaced by a deep, steady baritone. The patient is out of the woods. My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor, and I forgot how to breathe. The doctor who had just saved my father was Silas Thorne. Unlike my internal chaos, Silas looked perfectly indifferent. His vitals are stable for now, but he needs to be in the ICU for 24 hours of observation. We'll need more tests to pinpoint the bleed and monitor his recovery. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. A nurse will go over the details with you shortly. Every move he made screamed professional. Once upon a time, women had packed to go to med school together and save lives. But I had broken that promise and chose to study photography instead. He finished speaking and began to walk past me. Silas, I couldn't help it. I whispered the name I'd screamed in my heart 1,000 times over the years. He stopped and turned slowly, his distant gaze landing on me. Is there something else? I opened my mouth, wanting to explain everything that happened back then, but my eyes fell on a faint smudge of lipstick on his collar, and the word choked in my throat. I lowered my gaze and shook my head. Nothing. I just thank you for saving my dad. The silence between us was suffocating and stiff. Finally Silas spoke coldly. Why did you call me earlier? Did you need something? My head snapped up. He had actually received that accidental call. For a brief moment I found the courage to mention the past. But Silas cut me off with an annoyed expression. In the future, don't call me unless it's an emergency. Our history is awkward. To say the least, awkward. I managed a faint, bitter smile and twisted my fingers together, agreeing quickly, right? Of course, the thing he was worried about wouldn't happen anyway. In 1 week, I was moving to New Zealand with my father. The air was better there, perfect for his recovery and perfect for my fresh start. Once he got the answer he wanted, Silas brushed past me. He was like a gust of wind that only touched my skin for a fleeting second. I didn't stay there. I followed my father's gurney, walking in the opposite direction from Silas. My mother's sudden death had been a massive blow to my father. The first thing he asked for when he woke up after surgery was a photo of her when she was young. My heart trembled at the sight of him. There was no doubt my father loved my mother deeply. He loved me too. He was always the one trying to fix the rift between my mom and me. Even though he knew she never quite forgot her first love, he remained devoted to her until the end. I leaned over to comfort him. I'll have Aunt Martha bring them over. You just need to. My words died as I noticed the chart at the head of the bed. Patient Arthur Rowan, attending physician Silas Thorne. I froze for a moment, my mind flashing back to our high school graduation ceremony. Silas had said he wanted to be a surgeon who traveled the world, saving people in need. The heart monitor suddenly began to beep rapidly. I snapped out of it instantly. I slammed the emergency button and ran out into the hall. "Doctors, someone help." I saw Silas sprinting toward the room, his expression grim. "What happened?" My heart was racing so fast I couldn't even form a sentence. "Don't panic. I'm here." He squeezed my shoulder briefly before rushing into the room. My heart, which felt like it was sinking in mud, suddenly felt a tiny tug of hope. I followed him inside. Silas administered a sedative to my father. Slowly, the old man drifted back into a deep sleep. I let out a heavy sigh of relief and whispered thank you. Silas still looked like he was carved from ice. "I'll be checking on him every 3 hours. Don't go screaming in the halls. It's bad for the patients," he left. As soon as he finished speaking, a nurse who was with him leaned in and whispered softly, "Don't take it personally. Dr. Thorne is always this cold. It's just his way." I gave her a small tight smile. The nurse sighed, her eyes filled with admiration. "Dr. Thorne saves all his warmth for his girlfriend. He's so talented that the top hospitals in the city tried to recruit him, but he refused, just so he wouldn't have to be long distance with her. Can you believe that, girlfriend?" Her words were like a pebble dropped into a still pond, causing ripples in my chest. I forced a smile. He sounds very devoted. So 3 years ago, when he said it was the last message, was it because Hester did dating her? I didn't let myself dwell on it. It was to be expected. It was only natural. I called my aunt and asked her to bring the photos to the hospital, but Aunt Martha had other things on her mind. "Now that you're back, stay for good. Your mother took your father's soul with her when she died. If you don't look after him, he won't last long." I hadn't told anyone about the immigration plans yet. Aunt Martha kept talking, but I was barely listening. "You're 30 now. You can't keep living in the past. Plenty of people fail at their first love, but they don't stay single forever." I gave a neutral hum. I never said I wouldn't get married, and it has nothing to do with my first love. I wouldn't even think of him if you didn't bring it up. I subconsciously rubbed the raised scar on my wrist and continued in a soft voice. "I've dated plenty over the years. It's just none of them felt right. They didn't really do anything for me." Before I could finish, a cold sneer sounded from behind me. "How hard could it be to please you?" I froze, my whole body turning stiff before I slowly turned around. Silas was standing at the door of the hospital room. I didn't know how long he'd been there. I awkwardly looked away, avoiding his piercing gaze with a cold face. Silas walked into the room. He set a bottle of pills down on the nightstand with a heavy thud. "Give him one of these as soon as he wakes up." "Just one," I nodded quietly. I looked up, meeting his dark eyes, but the explanation I wanted to give died in my throat. I expected him to walk away as if nothing had happened. Instead, he pointed to a health poster on the wall. "A girl should have a little more self-respect. It's better for you and for society." I followed his finger to a poster about preventing STDs. There was a red ribbon and a cheeky local slogan underneath that warned about the dangers of playing around with too many strangers. A wave of bitterness and hurt washed over me. I let out a soft, dry laugh. "Thanks for the concern, Dr. Thorne." Silas's face darkened and he turned to leave. "Dr. Thorne, when are you getting married?" I asked casually. He paused but didn't look back. "That's none of your business." I know my gaze was flat. "I just meant that if you were planning on inviting old classmates, you can skip me. Don't bother sending an invitation." Silas let out a cold, mocking laugh. "You don't need to remind me you aren't exactly someone important to me." I rubbed the scar on my right wrist, staying silent for a few seconds before a faint smile touched my lips. "I'm glad we're on the same page, otherwise it would be quite awkward for me." Silas's knuckles turned white as he gripped his clipboard. I looked away and pulled a chair over to sit by my dad's bed. "I'll press the call button if anything changes." With that, I leaned over the side of the bed and closed my eyes. I waited until the sound of his footsteps faded and the door clicked shut. Only when the room was silent, save for my father's breathing, did I open my eyes. I tugged my sleeve down to hide the scar. When I closed my eyes again, a tear slid silently into the pillow, soaking into the fabric. I fell asleep right there and slipped into a dream I hadn't dared to have in 13 years. It was a dream of a hot July afternoon, the sound of cicadas buzzing loud enough to drive a person crazy. In the dream, the exam results were out, and Silas and I had promised to go pick our colleges together. The next day we parted ways at the corner. He went east and I went west. I took my usual shortcut through the deserted area marked for demolition. Then a nasty voice broke the silence from behind me. "Silas Thorne cost us our payday. It's only fair we have some fun with his girl, right?" I turned around to see 3 local thugs. They had been shaking kids down for protection money until Silas caught them and called the cops. I ran as fast as I could, but they were like ghosts catching up to me. They dragged me into one of the abandoned houses. The dim yellow light pinned my shadow against the wall. I dug my nails into my palms, but I couldn't claw my way out of my own paralyzed body. Later, I put my clothes back on and went home. After that, I gave up on being a doctor. I played the fool and accepted my mother's decision to keep Silas and me apart. I pretended I didn't know she used my phone to send him a breakup text. It pretended I didn't know she had in my phone. I could never pick up a scalpel in this life anyway, because every time I held a blade, a dark, frantic thought would fill my mind: kill them. I wanted to drive the blade into those monsters, pierce their hearts and make them pay in blood. A loud clap of thunder woke me up. A familiar male voice sounded right in my ear, thick and confused. "Zoe, why did you break up with me back then?" The pre-dawn light was the color of a bruised plum, filtering through the hospital blinds in jagged slats. I sat up, the phantom weight of the dream still pressing on my lungs. Silas was standing at the foot of the bed, his white coat a stark, ghostly silhouette against the machines. He wasn't looking at my face. He was staring at my right arm, where the sleeve had slipped back in my sleep, exposing the jagged, silvered line of the scar. "My mother told me it was because I wasn't good enough for your family's legacy," he whispered, his voice cracking like dry timber. He finally met my eyes, and the cold, clinical surgeon was gone. In his place was the boy who used to share his headphones with me on the back of the bus. "But you're crying in your sleep, Zoe, and you're wearing a scar I didn't give you." "Who did?" I pulled my arm back, tucking it under the thin hospital blanket, my heart hammering a rhythm of ancient trauma. "It doesn't matter now, Silas. You have a life. You have a girlfriend you moved mountains to stay near. My father and I, we leave for New Zealand in 6 days. The tickets are booked." Silas let out a jagged breath, a sound that shattered the professional veneer he'd spent a decade building. "I don't have a girlfriend, Zoe." I blinked, the confusion swirling with my exhaustion. "The nurse said." "The nurse sees what I want the hospital to see," he cut in, stepping closer until he was looming over the chair. "I told everyone I was taken so they'd stop asking. Stop trying to fill a space that was already occupied by a ghost. I didn't stay in this city for a woman. I stayed because this was the last place I saw you. I thought if I became the most prominent surgeon in the country, I'd eventually find you. Or you'd find me." He reached out, his fingers hovering inches from my face before he pulled back, remembering the awkwardness he'd insisted upon earlier. "That lipstick on my collar?" A frantic mother hugged me after I saved her toddler in the 3 hours ago. I haven't had time to change my shirt, let alone my life. The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by the rhythmic hiss-click asterisk of my father's oxygen. "I didn't choose photography because I lost interest in medicine," I said, my voice barely audible. "I chose it because I couldn't trust my hands anymore. I couldn't imagine holding a scalpel without wanting to use it for something other than healing." I told him then, not the version my mother had crafted to protect her pride, but the raw truth of that July afternoon. I told him about the shortcut, the demolition site, and the shadows that had lived in my mind ever since. I told him how my mother had used my trauma as a weapon, convincing me that I was soiled, and that staying with him would only remind him of his failure to protect me. "She told me you'd hate me if you knew," I whispered, tears finally spilling over. "She said my presence would ruin your focus, your career, so I let her send that text. I let her hide the phone. I became a ghost so you could become a god." Silas didn't move for a long time. He looked like he was vibrating with a silent, tectonic rage, not at me, but at the decade of lies, at the 3 men whose faces I still saw in my nightmares, and at the mother who had played God with our hearts. "You thought I'd look at you and see a victim," he said, his voice dropping to a deep, vibrating baritone that shook me to my core. "Zoe, I look at you and I see the person who carried a mountain on her back for 10 years just so I could keep my hands clean enough to save people like your father. You didn't break our promise. You sacrificed yourself to keep mine." He walked to the window, watching the rain streak the glass like tears. 6 days isn't much time to undo 13 years. "It's not," I agreed, a lump forming in my throat. "And Dad needs the air in New Zealand. He needs a fresh start away from the memories of Mom." Silas turned back, his gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that made the hospital walls feel like they were melting away. "He doesn't need New Zealand air, Zoe. He needs a daughter who isn't running away anymore. And he needs the best post-op care in the country. He has that right here, room for 102 under my name." He stepped into my personal space, the scent of antiseptic and cedar wood enveloping me. It was the smell of my past and my potential future all at once. He reached down and took my scarred wrist, not with the clinical precision of a doctor, but with the reverence of a man holding something sacred. He didn't say a word as he leaned down and pressed a slow, lingering kiss directly onto the silvered scar. The heat of his breath against my skin made my fingers tremble. "I'm the attending physician," he murmured against my wrist, a ghost of a smile finally breaking through his icy exterior. "And I'm officially refusing to discharge this family. Not until I've had a chance to fix what was broken." Outside, the storm began to break, streaks of gold bleeding through the gray clouds over the city skyline. For the first time in 13 years, The tightness in my chest didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a door swinging open. I looked at my father, who was beginning to stir, and then back at the boy who had become the man I never stopped dreaming of. I suppose, I whispered, reaching up to finally brush a stray lock of hair from his forehead. I should probably call the airline and tell them there's been a change of plans. Silas didn't move away. He leaned into my touch, closing his eyes as if he were finally coming home. Tell them the patient isn't fit to travel. He has a heart condition, and so does his daughter. They both need to stay exactly where I can see them.